We have Liyana here today.
Yes. And Liyana, you're coming from SOUNDBOKS,
Correct.
e-commerce director.
Yes.
We've been looking forward to having you. So welcome on board.
Thank you.
And you're the first guest in our new studio. So welcome.
I'm so excited. Thank you.
And this is also the first one we've done in English, I think.
Yeah, it is.
So we really have to up our games.
Yeah. It's, our English needs to improve a little bit.
Yeah. Oh. But anyway, it's good to have you. And obviously, I hope everyone listening and watching knows who and what SOUNDBOKS is, at least as a general term. But perhaps you could just give a brief rundown of the business in general, like the product, the markets you operate in, and perhaps also your own role in SOUNDBOKS.
Sure. So SOUNDBOKS, for those who don't know, it's basically a loudspeaker company. We make one very, very loud speaker, as the word itself says. And we operate globally. It's kind of a born global D2C company that started online and took off like a rocket from there on. It started around, I would say, 10 years ago with 3 guys who were just very excited about Roskilde Festival, and they did their best. They built the best speaker, the loudest one. And, it kind of got popular from there, and they got very lucky with a lot of opportunities on the way. And we're here now with a global company with around 70-ish employees, majority in Denmark, and some in the US. So that's kind of the overall company. Yeah.
We just saw a review on the website that said something along the lines of Thor's hammer within portable speakers, giving back to the actual strength behind the speakers.
Something about it, right?
Yeah, there's definitely something impressive about it. Myself, not being from Denmark, I did not know much about it beforehand. But once I started learning more about the product, I was also quite blown away how much power there is in the speaker.
And also very durable. I remember when the marketing began, people were throwing around with their SOUNDBOKSes because they're very durable in terms of this. It has these rubber edges, so it can't really hurt itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been built for surviving everything in the festival, right? So whether you spill a beer or kick it or someone throws it off or through another camp, you have to make sure that it still runs, the next day. So
you called it a direct-to-consumer brand, but you do also sell a little bit into businesses, like companies can get a branded speaker. How big a portion is that of your overall revenue? Is it 5, 10, 100%?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's more ad hoc than a full setup. I mean, we do have B2B website and we sell to other businesses as well, but we don't do a lot of customizations. It's more on request. And
then it's the color, logo, stuff like that, right? Or
it's an option, yeah. It depends how creative you want to get.
Okay, we should get one.
We need one.
Yeah,
I think
so.
We actually do need one. But in terms of your role as an e-commerce director, can you just put in some words around the role in general, your focus, perhaps what a normal day looks like for you?
So as an e-commerce director, of course, I have a little team. In this case, a very compact team. I only have 3 employees in my team officially, but we do work quite cross-functionally across the team. We also have a rather big app team. As an extension of the product, we have an app that basically helps you to connect the speakers and team them up, as the feature is called, and make sure that you can fine-tune your settings as well. So that team has quite a few engineers, quite a few UX designers, so we work very closely with them as well. We do take care of the website in my team, and we make sure that the conversion is top-notch. It's been through everything, this website, I feel. Even myself, when I joined, it was right after migration. So we had a lot of cleaning up, a lot of tidying up to do after. And that's what we spend a lot of the time on doing.
Where did you migrate from?
It's a great question. I actually don't know what the platform before was, but it migrated to Storyblock, which is an easy modular platform where you can edit content. But the base is on Shopify.
Okay. So those 3 people, how many people were you in your team?
Yeah, so 4 in total with myself. Yeah.
What are the different roles that they have?
So we have a content specialist, we have a developer, and we have a UX designer.
Right. Okay. So fairly technical setup.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. We also have, our commercial department. We have brand teams, we have performance marketing and all of that separately. So we can always ping pong with other teams.
Cool.
And we've talked with a bunch of different e-commerce businesses, and the e-commerce function can look very different. You have obviously been through an array of different setups from all your previous employers as well. can you just outline perhaps the general sort of focus like of the e-commerce function and SOUNDBOKS? Like it sounds very technical. Like you're focused on conversion. You're also focused on the user experience. Like, can you talk about that perhaps, and also how it might alienate from other setups?
Yeah, I think generally I've been through the mill. I feel I've tried all kinds of different roles within e-commerce, from very analytical to rather creative to quite technical as well. So in SOUNDBOKS, our one main priority is to defend and make sure that our conversion rate is the best possible conversion rate we can have. And we do that at all costs, more or less, but not sacrificing the customer experience, of course. So that's kind of like the main focus for us. I think generally speaking, e-commerce managers and directors are very different. Also myself and my network, I meet up with a lot of very different profiles. Some are extremely creative, born from marketing, and that's kind of like their core specialty. Others are developers in the background, and then they sort of deviate to more sales-focused function. And there can be also some sort of hybrids in between, which I guess what I'm myself. Like I tried a little bit of everything and landed right in the middle, I think.
So what are your KPIs? What kind of metrics do you look at day to day?
On a daily basis, I mean, I have like sort of my own, what would you call like a short list of KPIs. Every job I start, every year I audit the website and I look at everything from how is the quality of our traffic to make sure that we communicate well enough with our performance marketing team and figure out where the traffic comes from and how to sort of guide them through the website so that they get the best possible experience. Then, of course, we assess the website itself and how does the funnel look like. Is there any troubles navigating through the site? Is it clear? Is it straightforward? How easy is it to add to cart? How long does it take to add to cart? And then also the steps in between, sort of like from add to cart to the final success. And then, of course, we also assess what happens afterwards. So how good is the post-purchase experience? How long does it take to receive the parcel? How's your unboxing experience? How's the service?
Wow.
And the list continues, right? But kind of like my domain at the moment is like everything in between. So from the moment we get the customer on the website to the success page, how can we make that experience as easy, as smooth, and straightforward as possible?
So the overall conversion rate, that's your core metric, basically.
Let's consider another e-commerce that really wants to nail this sort of specific area for you, like you guys are doing. Like, how would one go about that? Just talk to me like I'm a 10-year-old noob who doesn't know anything. Like, do you use like heat maps, for example, to see how people navigate the site? Like, what tools do you use? Like, where do you start if you want to really nail down on this sort of customer experience?
Yeah, I think it depends on the setup, really, and what budgets you have. Because there are some tools on the market that are, I mean, you basically just plug and play and you get all your answers. So I think that's quite a luxury to have that kind of setup.
What could that be? What kind of tool would that be?
To name drop. I think
something called Hotjar. Is that something?
Hotjar, yeah. There's like Mouseflow, Hotjar. I think they're sort of part on the same level, but Hotjar got acquired by Content Square, which is one of the tools that I do prefer to use if possible, because it's kind of like you literally plug it in and it goes, and
shout out
works.
Content Square.
Yeah,
Content Square.
Oh, my best friends. No, but I think that's a very good tool because you get to see heat maps and all of that you get from a normal session recording tool. Yep. But you sort of layer that with actual journeys and you can see what are the most frequent journeys, how people navigate through your site, how long does it take, how many pages they have to visit before they get convinced to purchase. So it's very like visual. It's more like a UX analytics tool. That's
really interesting, especially given like the general focus on lack of sort of tracking capabilities. But on this sort of aggregate level, you can actually get a fairly detailed view on how people are actually navigating and how they're interacting with the different options, etc. So yeah, and there's,
I also spoke recently in a panel where I was telling that you get the data stitched up for you like nothing you've ever seen. And if you can track everything from where you acquire the customer, how many times, which channels they actually explored on before they actually decided to go to your website, how many times they had to visit your website, over what period of time, and then everything in between and beyond, I think that's such a powerful knowledge to have. But that knowledge comes also with responsibility. So if you want the data, you need to know how to use it. And I think a lot of small companies just simply don't have the capacity for it. There are some best practices. I mean, you can just open up the book, follow the best practice, you'll get the conversion that you need. And that's sufficient enough to run a normal business, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you can go very granular, but not everyone needs that sort of level of granularity, if that's a word. So let's perhaps put a pin in that and just say sort of the low-hanging fruits of your sort of, let's say I present with you whatever case on there's an e-commerce, and they just wanna improve the sort of what things would you look at? Like, what's the most important sort of things to put a pin in?
I think generally I also like to measure and see how long it takes for me to figure out how to add a product to cart and then check out, or at least go to a payment step and see how difficult that is. You can easily check up. There's like website where you can check, how much traffic the website is getting, what type of traffic. Then you can see what kind of experience you want to create accordingly. I also try to figure out what the product is and approximately the target audience is. So if it's a young male within, 20s to 35, then probably you expect that they're relatively tech savvy. They want quick checkout. I mean, you observe people, friends who sit on their couches with their phones. If there's no mobile pay in Denmark, the whole experience is ruined, right? So it's sort of like you have to have like key payments, key shipping, key platforms that are easy to use, and that's just like the
baseline.
base, like non-questionable.
Talking about the visitors that you get, I mean, it sounds like your domain is very much the conversion rate and everything that happens on site, but I guess the on-site activity is so dependent on the whatever comes your way, so whatever traffic goes your way, which sits with another department almost. So curious to hear your thoughts about how you guys work together in terms of qualifying the traffic and making sure that there's a feedback loop, sending feedback back to marketing, making sure you twist the right buttons every time that you can see there is something that disqualifies as irrelevant traffic.
Yeah, I think we're still quite in between, like we're not at the top of maturity of that process and the cross collaboration. So myself, I like to take initiative and I like to just feed the data that I have. So people usually, once it's in their face, they will do something about it, right? So I started basically from the moment I started at SOUNDBOKS, I started sending out reports from Ecommerce, full organization, everyone, regardless whether you're an engineer, product developer, in the repair, in customer service, everyone receives the same simple Ecommerce report where they can see what's going on, how much we're selling, what are the KPIs that we're improving on and not doing so well. And there's always like a mini analysis of why that might be. So from time to time, that also triggers conversations within the organization saying, okay, well, what's up? Where's the traffic coming from? Did we observe anything different? Did we put less money behind it? Or is it a specific activation or activity that triggered it? So we sort of try to get those natural conversations more and more in. And going forward, hopefully also we'll have a bit more streamlined data that will help us to just quickly fine tune and get the answers, because it's very visible when the traffic is.
I think that's such a good takeaway already in terms of we're planning to pick your brain on like how you can move through the ranks as an e-commerce professional. And I think just that alone, just being like very outspoken and like very clear in terms of what are you actually looking at, what actually moves the needle, what makes sense for others to actually know about, because just them being sort of aware of what's working and what's not working might also help them to actually move their work in the right direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. And no one ever got angry about having a little extra information. It's usually the other way around, right? Yeah. So it's like, why did we not know this?
Is there any particular moment where you think back about one email you sent out, maybe where you said like, where there was one piece of information that really helped like spark that collaboration between marketing or your department or whatever department it might have been?
Good question. I think some of the things that really work, it seems to be also in this particular organization, just taking a little extra initiative, just booking that extra workshop, just sending that extra report, is the things that make the difference. It doesn't have to be constant bombarding of meetings, like no one wants that, right? But it's just having that once in a while. Okay, there's a challenge that we have. How about we sit down together and then you pick and choose some people that could help you solve that. So I think just that. And we had a workshop last year. We had some testing parties for the website where everyone's invited, and then you can sort of flag your concerns and say, hey, how about this? Or we have this email coming out. Have we thought about this for the website? And this ad worked like this and like that, so it's kind of like an opener for conversation.
I heard a podcast the other day about Rocket Internet. I think perhaps you both know them.
Yep.
Basically, I think it was European, no?
German,
exactly. And the basic premise of their concept was they copy pasted basically other businesses in adjacent markets. So, for example, they would take Airbnb to another market that they weren't in. And the thing that they did, at least from what I've heard from this podcast, was that basically they would just monitor the copy or the original website, and they would look for like pixels that would just change, like very, very minor changes. And they were like, everyone, we need to move this 1.5 pixel to make sure that it, and this color needs to be this hex code instead of this hex code to make sure that it actually perfectly aligns with the original. So that's sort of the one end of the extreme in terms of like very, very focused on minor details, obviously copy pasting. But in terms of these sort of minor changes and like A/B split testing, like how focused are you on sort of these minor tweaks? Are you running a lot of split tests? And
I mean, we have tried a little bit. I think this is also sort of a thing that we want to explore more this year. It's also very dependent on the organization and the capacity you have. So coming from Podimo, where experimentation was the key, because you're basically fighting for every 0.0 point, something percentage of the conversion rate that matters. Here, if you have like 0.001 change, it doesn't really matter so much because it's a different game. It's not subscription. It's
higher price points.
It's more order frequency, UPT, all of those things. Whereas there is like one subscription missed is like a big deal, So I think that was also where experimentation culture was a bit more to the extreme. On app, on web, everyone's testing every single thing from day to evening, every day. And there you have also, 50 plus engineers that can help you with whatever. We also had Google Optimize at the time. Now it's not there anymore. There's not really a perfect tool. Not that it was perfect, but no perfect tool on the market. So we really have to make a conscious investment into A/B testing tool. And you have to have enough designers, enough content editors to make sure that they have the capacity to make the changes. It also takes a few people to operate the websites, right? So it's also like an added layer on top that you have to facilitate for.
For sure.
So.
And I also think I heard another podcast basically also on Airbnb where they had these sort of very cross-functional teams, and it wasn't like marketing or e-com, it was just a growth team. So basically you would connect like a marketer, a designer, perhaps a UX, some more technical expertise, and you will bundle them all together. And they will say, hey, your core focus in this whatever month is just this one thing, and then it would just figure it out. So I think there's also strength in which I also commend you for this team that you have. It's like quite diverse, but also very technical. So you can actually move the needle in these different areas compared to, for example, I'm used to working solely with marketeers. Like we can just talk a whole lot, and perhaps we can make some good ads, but we also need the technical side. So
yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, we do have actually a cross-functional, cross-department collaboration that is so-called Ecommerce squad that we created end of last year. Yeah, I know, right? It works quite well, I think, because you bring different skills, you bring different mentality, you bring different pace, and kind of like educate and cross-educate people on different things. So we brought people from the app team to the web to help us out a bit, to accelerate some of the tasks that we had to complete. And there's already now like this cross-functional thinking on, well, our customer is going to go from the website to the app. What's going to happen in those 2 touch points, and how are they going to navigate? Then bringing an email, like what happens afterwards, so like these, just linking the neurological paths in the organization, I think is quite powerful. And it's a very nice change to observe.
Yeah, awesome. I think what would be interesting also to dive a little bit deep on is sort of the growth aspect of SOUNDBOKS. I remember when they launched for, 6 years ago, more?
10 years ago.
10 years? Okay, wow, we're getting old. But even though, I mean, like PR has obviously been big because they were like trying to do something completely new in a fairly dusty sort of hi-fi, what's it called back then? So like from then till today, like, do you know what has been sort of the primary drivers of growth, like, and what is still today, perhaps in the marketing side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when SOUNDBOKS started out, there has been also really good momentum in terms of events, engaging community, all that sort of organic partnerships, a lot of physical events and activations, which actually did a big difference back in the day. And that's what sort of created a community on Facebook that we have in different markets, which is very self-sustaining, engaged communities that, sell, resell, play with SOUNDBOKS, do crazy customizations of their own. So they have like their own little universe. We also heard about some parties in Germany where you can only be invited if you have SOUNDBOKS. It's like a whole subculture going on.
Wow, cool.
A lot has changed during COVID, and the past couple of years we've been through a lot in this industry. And I think that's also something where everyone has expectations where maybe e-commerce is going to go down, or now it's, the end of e-commerce because everything's going back to physical. And I'm like a bit skeptical about these extremes where people think that one or the other. I think now it's more than ever where you have to really cross everything together and make sure that you have a good control over your customer paths instead of just competing with channels. Like, doesn't matter. So I think that is an interesting shift. And growth-wise, those communities did a lot for SOUNDBOKS. I think also the improvements that have been made in product is also quite impressive. We don't have this chasing of growth mentality where, you launch a product just to launch a product. It's actual customer feedback that goes into product development. It's, community feedback. It's Instabugs and in the app. It's all those that come directly from the customers where we consider, implement, improve. And once we're ready to have launched a product that is ready to launch and we think it's worth launching, then it's a new product that comes out. And so I think that's also like a tweak, constant, bit slower growth maybe, but more sustainable in my view.
You just talked a little bit about like e-commerce or reusing products, creating almost a marketplace. Try to tell us a little bit about how SOUNDBOKS are trying to, because I guess one of the biggest competitors of yours is almost the used market in a way. So if you can go buy a used SOUNDBOKS, then that's a missale for you guys. So what are you guys doing in order to capture some of that? We know you have a little bit of a workshop where you can just fix your old one and then you can sell it.
I don't think we think of it as a competition. We're actually quite happy that the product can live that long and then be resold even better. I think that's one of the focuses for us as well, to make sure that first we have enough products, but not too many products, so that we don't have like this excess supply that no one needs really, So we want to make sure that we have just enough for everyone that has the interest. For those who already purchased SOUNDBOKS, we have a repair station in our office in Copenhagen. So sometimes we get, a very large container of SOUNDBOKS coming in and the office is filled up, and people are just working through to make sure that they're repaired and sent back to the customer. So that's actually where we put more emphasis on, is to prolong that life.
And is that a sort of an extra service, or do you have like extended warranty on the product itself?
We have extended warranties and basically just trying to prolong the life. And once the warranty expires, then of course you can still reach out and then we will help. Yeah. And we do sell also refurbished products on our website. So we have something where you can just, basically go and buy a refurbished one that maybe wasn't fully ready to return, or, we didn't want to put it back on the market. So we did some tweaks and adjusted, and then we made it ready to be used. Yeah.
Now, marketing sits in a different department, but try to paint the picture of how do you guys get your customers, other than obviously you mentioned all the organic awareness that has been created. But the more measurable channels, like, is it the classic like Google, Meta, or do you also have partner strategies, or how big is retailers, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so we do have retail. It is also a growing share. We are expanding on physical retail because, of course, it's much easier to see the product and experience the product on the spot. So
hear the product
and really get that wow factor there. So we are working on that, and we have a very strong team in Copenhagen and in the States. So that's in progress. And we have also performance marketing team in Copenhagen, which is very much focused on, of course, Meta and, of course, Google and TikTok and Snapchat and all the classics. Yeah, we are actually quite driven by paid, but not just pouring money endlessly. I think we're very cautious on our ROI and how and what quality of traffic we get. And then we also have partnerships and communications. So that's also something where we're looking more and more into how do we collaborate with others? How do we enable businesses? How do we make more of those custom built soundboxes? How do we basically expand sort of through different partnerships?
But I guess like in terms of growth, I mean, just top of mind and the awareness in general is a huge thing for you guys, because we were just talking like literally today over lunch. Hey guys, we don't have a soundbox yet. We didn't say a speaker. We were like, we didn't have a soundbox because that's what we're used to. Like I've purchased at least a couple of soundbox, at least in my business. Like, so I think just when people need a speaker, at least I'm not sure like the target groups. I imagine is still fairly young. Mm-hmm. So when younger people need a speaker, I think soundbox is probably where they go to quite quickly. Yeah. At least what I imagine.
Yeah, I do think so as well. I mean, it's not necessarily only younger. I think it's also a very niche community where people who really appreciate music and, either work within music industry or have even podcast studios or whatever it might be. We've seen also, of course, people like Travis Barker, like Beckham's, like, very high caliber people having soundboxes.
Does Travis Barker, does he have a soundbox?
Yeah, there's an Instagram post.
I'm so the fanboy. No, do you know who it is?
Peter definitely need one now.
He's the drummer from Blink-182.
Right? And there's many, many more. I mean, it's a crazy world where I think it's such an understated speaker in many people's minds, because even though it looks big, it's very loud. It's just when you know, I think.
Yeah. There are very few companies who manage to do what Google has done, like almost becoming a verb. It's not exactly what it is. You don't soundbox as such, but it's definitely a category of itself. So you don't bring a speaker, you bring a soundbox, basically, as you were saying, right?
Yeah, and it's not many like speaker systems that has like a backpack.
No. Yeah, we make it very convenient for you, wherever you go.
Yeah, cool. Obviously, you mentioned the retailers. You at least have some of the big ones, at least Hi-Fi Club, Elegant, and perhaps some others. So
in Denmark.
In Denmark, obviously. But in terms of going abroad, you said you are like global first, at least. Like, so in terms of the bigger like retailers, like a lot of people, especially in e-commerce, in the last at least like 4 or 5 years ago, Amazon was all the rage. Like Amazon is coming to Denmark. What will happen to us, etc. Now Temu, I don't even know how you say it. Temu is on the rage now. So like, have you thought about the sort of bigger international online retailers? And if so, like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so we have also Amazon in a couple of markets.
Which?
We already, we do have in Germany and the US.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a good channel. It's a great exposure as well that you can get because their communities, of course, you can't compete with that regardless of what marketplace you might be. In terms of physical retail, it's also TBD, but we are expanding in all of the big...
To be decided, if people don't know that one.
Yeah, to be confirmed. So basically, I mean, we are expanding in these areas, and I think for us on the e-commerce side of things, it's only a positive. So for us, a sale in the company is a sale. Like, it doesn't matter if it's online on our own channel or on physical store through a partner, because ultimately we just want to get many soundboxes out there and make people happy and make sure that, everyone's having a good party. But online, we also feel that there is a bit of a momentum. So once you expand to a big retailer, there is like a little wave of new customers, a little wave of interest, a little bit more traffic, a little bit more, experience and engagement to the site. So it's only a positive, I think, for us, because through the website, we can either make a sale or add people to our community. So it's a win-win regardless of where we end up.
And what about in terms of like price points and general communication? I mean, you lose some sort of control when you use retailers like this, I imagine.
Yeah.
I've done it before. But is it, let's say I want to purchase a soundbox here versus the States, Amazon versus your site. Is it the same price across channels, or how do you work with that?
I mean, it is recommended retail price, right? So you just follow the rules basically. But I don't think we'll lose so much control. Of course, you can't track every data point there is, but ultimately, we have an app and people want to use the app. They register their speaker, there's extra security, there's extra services, extended warranty. So there's a bunch of benefits you can get when you register. And that's basically where we have, we know all the numbers. We know every unit that has ever been sold, right? So it's not lost.
How many units?
Oof, I actually couldn't answer even if I wanted to. No idea, actually.
That's actually quite interesting. 10 years of speakers, like how many speakers?
Yeah.
How many?
Should ask probably, yeah.
What about like it started as one speaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about that in terms of like the product development side, because obviously we mentioned it's a fairly high price point. It's not really like an impulse purchase. Like,
yeah.
How have you been working with sort of product development in terms of making sure that you can upsell, cross sell, you can actually keep customers within the brand instead of seeing them again in 10 years when they need to upgrade, or 5 years, because they're very durable, right? That's meant to be.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, that's, I guess, price is relative when you think about how long the speaker lasts.
True.
If you buy I'm not going to name anyone, but like any smaller, more affordable speaker that looks more affordable, it also lasts. I always like to say that, you get what you pay for. And I think the same goes with SOUNDBOKS. We do have extra services, we have repairs, we have everything to make sure that, it lives as long as possible. At some point I tried to ask, I believe, in my onboarding, what is the lifetime of a SOUNDBOKS? And people actually were like, you know what? I think some of those that we sold 10 years ago are still alive. So
a lifetime.
Yeah. So far, so good. So I think it's a definitely understated price for what you get in terms of value.
It reminds me of Patek Philippe.
I was just about to say it.
Oh, what a great comparison.
Can you remember what the phrase is?
You merely look after it for the next generation.
Yeah, you don't ever own a Patek.
Yeah.
You merely look after it, something like that, right? There's a big banner just down here. That's why you probably see it. Yeah.
That's what people say about cats, right? Just like you don't own a cat, you're just like a companion.
It's a companion.
I'd rather have the Patek, but that's just me.
Maybe a SOUNDBOKS.
But in terms of the product development, like what other like adjacent products or like upsell opportunities are there, for example, now?
So you named also the backpack as a really great add-on. I think for us, it's not so much about selling 20 SOUNDBOKSes to the same person. That's not the point, right? The point is to make sure that you get what you need. So if you're an outgoing person who goes to festivals, who camps a lot, or whatever it is, and you need that portable speaker, you get the backpack, right? Or if you go to a lot of parties and you want to make sure that SOUNDBOKS lasts, I don't know, for 48 hours or how long your party is, you get an extra battery. And then the same with some cables and, stuff like that. So it's all that is relevant to have if you need it. It's not that we are going to force for you to buy cables.
How does the app, you mentioned the app before, how does that work in terms of your role and getting a better understanding of the customer usage or the lifetime of the customer? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think I do believe we have a very cool app, and we just got a facelift and an upgrade in the back of the app in February. So it's a very big enhancement that has happened. I think there's a lot of cool data points you can learn from the app. People give feedback. People give you rankings on the App Store and Android Store as well. So you can see what they want, what are they missing, and why do they rank you well or not so well. So you basically have like a finger on the pulse for your customer experience. And there's a lot of things we can also solve through the website to support the app and, the rest of the business. So I think app is one of those that is kind of a product without being a product. It's an extension of the product, and it helps us to understand what people want out of SOUNDBOKS and how can we enhance it going forward.
And it's free, right? Or,
it is. Yeah.
And you don't have to use it? Like you can still use it without the app, I imagine?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And you also don't have to have a SOUNDBOKS to have the app. So if you have your friends that have SOUNDBOKS, you can still have the app and do all the cool things with the app.
Is this also a way to track, like, if I sell my SOUNDBOKS to someone else, then you guys can get a better understanding of the ownership change?
Hands. Yeah.
That's a very specific question.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can. I think you can also report somehow that, the owner has changed. But
just wondering, like, if that's a way or could be a way to track the usage sales that has been the SOUNDBOKS.
I'm pretty sure we can, but I think there's also limits on how much we should track.
Yeah, and probably if you need it, but that might have been interesting to know.
And you also see the percentage of how many of the SOUNDBOKS actually
get resold.
One of my favorite brands is Carhartt, and they have in the back of some of their jackets and so on, they have labels with owner 1, owner 2, owner 3 as a really statement to the durability of their product, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, I also like that. It's a good brand.
I think I have something I would really like to talk about, and that's because we have a profile in front of us who have done a lot of different things in a lot of different companies, and we know there's a lot of e-commerce like operators who are moving through the ranks or perhaps already going up there. So I think we can talk about SOUNDBOKS forever, but I also just want to pick your brain in terms of like how should, let's say I'm a new e-commerce, I just landed in the e-commerce, I'm trying to become better in my role. Obviously the role can look very different in very different setups, but just imagine it's a general e-commerce manager. I think that's the general title. Like, what have you learned in terms of what really works to actually become better at the job, becoming really proficient within the e-commerce? You already mentioned like the reporting and actually keeping the other people in the organization on their toes. But what else have you learned in terms of what really works to move upwards?
Yeah, I think some of the things are also quite general advice maybe I have, because the longer you spend in the industry, the more strict you become with your priorities, I think. So a couple of pieces that I think are critical in moving through those ranks, as you're saying, is to, one, get your numbers straight. So whether that being, you can always complain that the data is not good enough, that there's not enough data, you can't track this, you can't track that, but just get what you can get and see what you can use it for. So if you can get your sales numbers, start tracking them over time. Start looking, what's the benchmark? Same month last year, what's happening? Try to understand and just get curious about what is actually working and what is not working. I think people forget to look into why is it going well way too often. Everyone's just focused and hyper-focused on this is not working, we're not selling enough, the units are not moving. And then you're like you drown in that bubble of like things not working instead of why did it work before, So that's one. The other, I think, is prioritization is key. So what I like to do is to basically look at impact versus effort. Like how much do you need to put in order to move the needle on that conversion rate? If it's going to move 0, whatever, is it worth it? Or is it better to focus on fixing that one technical thing that is hideous and difficult and it's going to take a month, but it's going to move, significantly more. So when I build roadmaps, when I build strategies or tactical plans, I always go through a very, very heavy exercise to audit the organization, to look through the data I have, to talk to people in the organization. What is everyone complaining about? What are customers saying? What am I observing? Boil it down into one big sheet of ideas, and then start really like digging into like what is it going to move and prioritize from there, and say no to a bunch of other irrelevant things that your stakeholders think is a good idea.
Super, super good points. And obviously you've been in, as I mentioned a couple of times now, different organizations with different people, different roles. In terms of sort of the profiles that really like shine through in terms of being in the e-commerce function, like is it the more technical people nowadays, I'm thinking? Is it a mixture? Like, so it's also a lot of creative people, or like what type of roles have you seen in your career up till now that really sort of carries the load in the e-commerce function?
I think it's usually, it really doesn't matter which profile you come from. I think it's at the end of the day, how motivated are you to solve a problem and how much do you want to hustle? I think that's the things, where you're like, okay, if I have a problem at hand, will I hesitate and wait to solve, or will I make it everyone else's problem? Or will I just take charge and get it done? Like, even if it's not perfect, just get it done, figure out what works, what doesn't, and then move on from there.
Yeah.
And that's usually the profiles, I think, that move. Like, we had people moving from very creative backgrounds in my teams to more technical, from service to, content management. And that can be like cross-learned very easily, I think. So just be curious and learn.
Just from outwards looking in, it can seem quite technical. Like you need to have some sort of an eye for numbers, and you need to be detail oriented. So you can't be like this boisterous creative person just walking around, so chatting up with people, sort of like I would. So I think there's some profiles that might suit better for e-commerce. I'm just thinking out loud, but there's
there
obviously
I can challenge you there for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
Please.
I was not good at math, neither am I technical. And all I wanted to do is to be creative and study music back in the day, you know? So for me, it was, I don't know how it all happened and how it all stacked up, but I was just always very stubborn. I wanted to learn. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to do this with math. I'll sit down, I'll grind, and I'll get it done. Like, that's the mindset, you know? And then I think I took one after another. I took education in economics. I studied also marketing and international business. Zero technical skills when I came out of the university, but I just really wanted to learn. And it kind of went from there.
You also mentioned curiosity, right?
Yeah.
It's a big one in all roles, I guess.
I truly believe so. And I think there is a formula in the industry that you get sort of put into the track when you go study, right? But at the end of the day, when you hire people, I mean, it's your motivation and it's your persistence that counts. And the more boxes you can put a person in, the more useful they are for smaller organizations, the more likely they are to be hired. So
I couldn't help hearing that you were studying music, or you have been playing, or there's a theme here.
There's a bit of
Podimo and now SOUNDBOKS as well.
That is right. Yes, there is a reason why I'm at SOUNDBOKS. Yeah, I think there's also a lot of like-minded people with music and passion for music and sound, and that definitely shines through in SOUNDBOKS. I think everyone has something to do with music in the company.
Nikolai is also very musical.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of music.
Lovely. Do you have a SOUNDBOKS?
I'm gonna get one now.
Yeah, you should get one. I recently, like before the holidays, I talked with an e-commerce manager who was in a fairly old company, I would say, meaning that the other people were quite old, and he was one of the sort of the newcomers, and he had been sort of, he got the role of you figure out the e-commerce setup, like you figure it out, like a retailer that is like, let's try this online thing, we really need to get going, everyone's talking about it and has been for the last 15 years, perhaps now is the time. And in that sort of organization, obviously you haven't tried sort of that, or perhaps you have, but what advice would you give to someone who's in that situation where you really have to sort of educate the organization, and perhaps you don't have the sort of stars on your shoulders yet to actually be able to do it? So that was a sort of a funny situation that he found himself in. But I imagine some others are in the same position.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I was 26, 27 when I was in that situation, and got hired as the digital person in the company to basically take over a very vintage website, I want to say, we just had to rebuild everything from scratch, basically. And I was the only person, and I got a very small budget to just basically develop from and figure out whether whatever agency we should get, but we cannot hire people, right? So that was like the script. And in that situation, when you're young, all you want to do is prove yourself and make sure that everyone thinks you're smart and that you can deliver, and, you know, the classics. And I think the one lesson that I learned is to stand your ground, to still, you know, hustle, teach the organization, make sure everyone knows what you're talking about, and don't get too, you don't need to feel smarter than everyone else to teach people. So I think it's just keep everyone at the same level and elevate everyone with you. But the key thing is to have a plan. Just make up a plan and make sure that you know where you're going. And once you have the confidence in your plan, everyone else will get on board.
Good advice.
I think that's also some wise words to round off with.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Thank you so much for coming, Liyana. It's been a pleasure. And we learned a bunch.
We did.
And now we're going to go order a SOUNDBOKS.
Yeah, and Nikolai is going to play something upstairs.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Liyana, pleasure to have you. Thank you for being
here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tusind tak, fordi du lyttede med til denne episode af Let's Be Frank. Der kommer nye episoder hver eneste uge, så hvis du ikke går glip af næste episode, så hop ind på YouTube, Spotify og subscribe.
Og hvis du er nysgerrig på Franklin, hvor Nico og jeg kommer fra, så går du op ind på highfranklin.com for at læse mere. Vi ses i næste episode af Let's Be Frank.